I then got my first television show, and that would be in the late 50s. Uh, I, I had a very interesting television career in Puerto Rico. First, people should know that the cameras were enormous, enormous. And it would take two cameramen, not one. Today, some guy with one little camera takes your picture. In those days, cameras were just enormous. The lights were so hot, so that you would get up to 120 degrees under television lights in those days. And you wore makeup this thick, a kind of a brown makeup that would be that thick all over your face. The first television show I did was a show where I was the only woman with a bunch of handsome bachelors. And it was called What Do Men Want, If Anything? Anything was my parenthesis. My second television show was a show in which a man named Henry Corona, who was Trujillo from the Dominican Republic's chef, private chef, he and I stood in front of a table where Henry cooked a dish. We said the name of the dish today is chicken parmesan. We never described the ingredients. We never talked about the cooking. What we did was we gossiped, heavy, heavy gossip. And I had people who the station would pay money to tell us who was sleeping with whom, who was going out with whom, who was robbing whom, and we let all of that out on the air. It was an enormous hit in Central and South America, and I believe it was the first show done in Spanglish. You could watch this show if you spoke either Spanish or English or both and understand it perfectly, because Henry and I were able to speak fluently both languages. The third show was something, I hate talking about it, and I'll tell you why. I always felt somebody would steal it. And maybe they will, but I guess I'm now too old, so good luck to them. When the news was over, the 6 o'clock news was over, the lights would go out. They didn't go to commercial, they went to black. And then the lights came on in the newsroom. And at the desk, instead of the sports reporter, was a snake. Instead of the anchor woman was a woman with pearls. All of the people who appear in a news program were puppets. And I was the only live human being. I was kind of a roving reporter. And what we did off the top of our heads was satirize the news that we had just heard. So, if it was a story about some celebrity, the snake would report on it, changing everything to snake them. And that show, again, people who didn't even watch the news watched that show. It's one of the shows, I did it with a man named Art Merrill. It was one of the shows I was most proud of. And the reason is not every actor likes improvisation. I love it. So, like seconds, that was my second city. You would watch the news and then you'd try to figure out how to make it funny. And most news is not funny, and entertaining and interesting. And to this day, Art Merrill was a brilliant puppeteer. And to this day, I love working with puppets. I was able later in life to guest on Sesame Street. And they said, we've never had anyone who really believed as much as you. I'm able to suspend disbelief and to really believe in whoever I'm talking to.